Alright guys, so we already did lesson number 1 is putting, and lesson number 2 was chipping. If you didn't watch those, go watch them. And I figured it would be a good idea to just keep going up the ladder. And today I'm going to teach how to hit wedge shots, which is like anywhere from 40 yards to 90 yards or even 100 yards. And you can use any wedge. The lower the wedge, the harder you have to swing from each distance. And we're going to go over 3 main things that you're going to have to know in order to be a good wedge player. The first, just like chipping, is setup. So once again, just like chipping, it's not a normal setup, but it's not quite the chipping setup that we went over last week. It's somewhere in the middle. In my wedge setup, I adopted it from Wesley Bryan. And if you didn't know, Wesley Bryan, ex-PGA Tour player, he is one of, if not the best wedge players in the world. And so I saw a video of him explaining how he hits wedges and figured I should do the exact same thing. So his setup and my setup is we have our feet slightly narrow. We close our feet off slightly to our target. My target is this way. My feet are aimed that way, slightly closed off, slightly more right of my target, so that I have to swing left in order to hit it at my target. Our feet are slightly closer to the ball, and the ball is somewhat in the back of our stance. And then the weight distribution is about 60% on our front side and 40% on our back side. Not too aggressively on our front side, but definitely not even a little bit more on our front than our back. And there's the setup. We're slightly closer to the ball, slightly closer to the ball, slightly narrower stance, closed off a little bit, and leaning slightly forward. Once you have a good setup, then you're going to actually have to learn the swing that you're going to use with that setup. And right here, my target is about 50 yards away. So for me, 50 yards, I have my perfect setup, and I'm just rotating slightly over my backside. With the 50-yard shot, my hands probably get about belly button high, maybe chest high. If it were further than 50 yards, my hands would get higher and I'd rotate back further. And if it were less than that, it'd be the opposite. If it was, say, a 30 or 40-yard shot, I'd get to about my hip and rotate slightly less back. But for this 50-yard shot, I'm going to rotate until my weight's over my right side and my hands are about at my chest or shoulder. And on the downswing, with this wedge shot, we can be a little steeper with it. We can come down a little more right to left. Because if we have a wedge in our hands and we get two underneath it, two left to right, then that's going to promote chunking the ball. So what we want to do is get a little steeper and hit ball first and then the ground. After we have good contact, I just like slightly opening up towards the target, trying not to have too much motion in our bottom half, but still allowing our swing to finish towards our target, and then finishing with our hands pointed at our target or maybe a little bit more, and then finish with our hands pointing at our target or maybe a little bit more, or maybe even full if that's what you feel like doing. The third point that you need to know in order to hit a good wedge shot is your low point. And the low point is very important in hitting a good wedge shot. And what the low point is it's the point where your club is the lowest. And the low point we want with a wedge in our hand is something slightly in front of the ball, maybe an inch or an inch and a half past the ball. And the low point that we want with a wedge is either right at the ball or slightly in front of the ball if you're really compressing it like a tour pro would. And our low point with a wedge would either be right at contact or maybe slightly after contact. If our low point is too far forward out here, then you're going to either top the ball or thin it, shoot it right over the green. If your low point is too far back, then you're either going to slightly chunk it and it's going to come out a little softer with less spin, or it's going to be a massive chunk if your low point is way too far back and you're just going to hit all ground and the ball is going to go about 3 or 4 feet in front of you, depending on club head speed. So I'll go over the 3 things again. We have setup. We're slightly closer to the ball, slightly back in the stance. I prefer to be a little closed off with my weight slightly on my front side. And I'm just working the club pretty much straight back, over my right side, and coming down on top of the ball with a good low point, and then finishing with my hands pointed at my target and my weight over my left side with my body rotated towards my target. A good way to make sure that you have the right low point is by rehearsing it. So what I mean by rehearsing the low point is this motion right here. Just getting to your actual low point and making sure that's at the right spot. And you can even take practice swings. If you feel yourself hitting the ground back here, then obviously you need a low point more out in front. You need to try to get a low point further out in front. If the low point's too far out here, then obviously you need to try to hit behind the ball a little bit, make your low point further back. But if you can rehearse this feeling right here, getting a low point right at contact or just past it, if you can practice rehearsing a good low point, rehearsing this low point is called impact position. You're rehearsing your impact position. And you want to impact the ball. Rehearsing your low point, another way to say rehearsing your low point is rehearsing your impact position. And when you rehearse your impact position, you're letting your body feel where the club should be at impact. So by taking little practice swings, making sure you're hitting the ball. So by taking little practice swings, making sure you're hitting the ground at the correct spot, that'll also allow you to stand over the ball and confidently hit the ball with the club hitting the ground at the right spot once again. So now I'm going to hit a decent wedge shot. I've got my bag over there that I'm aimed at. And when you first start practicing how to hit a wedge, don't be too concerned about your target. Just prioritize good contact and good mechanics and good setup, and make sure that you have correct ball flight and spin. Okay, it's right here. We put our feet closer to the ball, slightly closed off, a little bit back in our stance. Weight a little bit forward, and we're just rotating about 50% back and 50% through, making sure our finish is pointed directly at our target. It should be a decent wedge shot. Actually, let's first rehearse our low point so we make sure that it's a good golf shot. If we can get our low point right there when we hit this ball, it's going to for sure be a good shot. That one came out a little low, and it went a little bit past our target, but that's all right. Another thing I forgot to mention is that with a wedge, if you open up the club face, one thing I forgot to mention is when hitting a wedge shot or a pitch shot, you can't really have too much of an open club face, or else you're not going to be able to compress the ball and have the ball flight that you want. You're going to want to have the club face slightly closed, pointing towards your target. Because what you're doing here, you're not lifting the ball up in the air. You're hitting the ball down into the ground, and the loft of the club does the work for you by propelling the ball up in the air once you hit it down into the ground. So once again, we don't want our club face too far open. In fact, at the top of our swing, we're going to want to feel like our wrist is twisting the club face closed to the left. That way it's pointing further left. It's more of a closed club face, and we can hit the ball. Feels like we're hitting the ball into the ground and compressing the ball towards our target by hitting ball first and then ground, or maybe a nanometer behind the ball. If you get too far behind the ball, then it's a chunk and it's not good. And once again, on a longer wedge shot, you take more of a backswing, get more over your right side and more of a follow through. And on a shorter wedge shot, you'd have less of a backswing, less on your right side, and a shorter follow through. That was a chunk. Don't know if you could tell, but that was in fact a chunk. Don't know what else to say here. Um, all right, so one thing I need to work on right now is these are all coming out a bit low. So I'm probably getting the shaft too leaned forward. I'm probably compressing the ball a little too much. I'm going to try to ease off of that a little bit. That way my ball flight can be a little higher how I want it to be. Yeah. That one landed just about at our target.